Alright, everyone, welcome back to Spicy Bits episode 4. I am very sorry that it's been so long between episodes, but I'm here, I'm back, I've got something new to talk about. Today's topic is going to be that America is becoming a monopoly. And that is my opinion, but I'm going to explain why I believe that. So, as I'm sure many of you have probably noticed, there's been a big phenomenon of large corporations kind of buying out their respective sectors of the market, and kind of it becoming like this oligarchical monopoly where you have, like your one shopping place, your one entertainment company, whatever. So like Amazon, for example, running small businesses aground, a lot of, resellers, small sellers, etc. are just selling as third-party sellers through Amazon. Disney buying up Marvel, buying up Star Wars, buying up a big portion of the entertainment industry, Hulu, maybe even HBO, I don't know, they've got a whole bunch of stuff. And then there's the whole kind of, pending merger between Kroger and Albertsons, kind of reducing our grocery store options. Locally, I'm based in the Illinois area. We have 2 hospitals that had merged together, like maybe, 10 years ago, and now have merged together with a 3rd hospital, so that there's really, 2 big major networks, and, 2 other smaller networks for the entire, metro area. So, again, things are kind of, getting smaller and smaller. And this is, the Department of Justice and some of these federal agencies are attempting, finally, for the first time since Teddy Roosevelt, pretty much, to begin some trust busting and break up these mergers and acquisitions, like when JetBlue tried to acquire some airline, I don't remember. I think now they're trying to acquire Spirit, but I think there's something else. Oh, American and JetBlue, I think, were trying to merge together, and that was blocked, and now JetBlue's trying to buy out Spirit, and, all this kind of stuff. Capital One is trying to buy out Discover. Schwab just bought out TD Ameritrade. I mean, all these companies are just, it's some degree of merger and acquisitions is normal within an economy, but, clearly we are headed towards an increasing, macro economy, and what I mean by that is, where everything is centralized, an increasingly centralized economy, where everything is centralized in the hands of just a few corporations. So essentially a financial oligarchy. That's where America is headed. And that intensifies when you consider that every single one of these companies, so obviously they're, in their respective sectors, you've got your one shopping, your one entertainment, your one airline, your one, cell phone carrier, your investment firm, whatever, retirement account, you've got just fewer and fewer choices, which, by the way, I would argue kind of takes away the advantage of capitalism, because the key advantage of capitalism that's always cited by every capitalist advocate is that capitalism is a competitive system, that market competition allows for the best possible results of both productivity and meeting consumer demand. That the beauty of capitalism is that you have choice, you have competition, and you can choose which business you want to go to and vote with your money, vote with your wallet, and not support businesses that you don't agree with. The problem is that fails when all these big businesses begin taking over and our economy becomes increasingly more and more centralized to the point where there is no choice. There is no competition anymore. It's just one big business colluding, with one another. And this has happened before, and that's why, trust-busting laws have been on the books. They've just not really been enacted for about 100 years because the government was, kind of passive to business interests, especially since those businesses funded a lot of lobbyist groups that funded those politicians' personal campaigns, so they're not about to bite the hand that feeds them, right? But finally we're getting a little tiny bit of trust busting, little tiny baby steps, but hey, I'll take it. But even still, even with all of this, clearly these companies are still trying to acquire and merge as much as they can, right? They're bouncing back from one trust-busting failure to, the next, how can we merge, how can we get even bigger, how can we buy something else out, right? And this problem becomes more obvious when you realize that, like I said, every single one of these companies, regardless of their sectors, regardless of what, industry they're in, every single one of these major corporations is dependent on their venture capital, which means that the four biggest firms in the U.S., the four biggest investment firms, BlackRock, State Street, Fidelity, and Vanguard, own the entire economy. That's it. Four companies own the entire American economy. If that is not an oligarchy, I don't know what is. And I would argue that's not capitalism, because when your entire economy is subservient to just four companies and the whims of four companies, and everything in the market is dependent on those four firms, then there is no real choice, because no matter where you go, that company still has to appease BlackRock and Vanguard and Fidelity and all of their investors. And so, if you don't like one business, it's not like you really have a whole lot of choice, because then you're just going to another business that has to appease those same exact investors. So, there's no real competition or choice with capitalism. Now, don't get me wrong. Am I saying that socialism is, the ideal economic system and that we should all be jumping on board for that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I want to clarify that as much as people advocate that capitalism is this amazing thing, and there's this whole, Adam Smithian, Austrian economics type view of unregulated capitalism is the key to personal freedom, that the freer the market, the freer the people, I want to contradict that by saying what we are seeing in our economy is that is not the case, that you are actually less free, there is less competition when the markets are too free to roam without intervention, that without intervention, the market does not regulate itself, it centralizes itself, and it becomes tyrannical, it becomes this sort of centralized power upon which we are all dependent. And I recognize that, what I'm saying is not anything new, it's not anything that people probably haven't heard before, but you never know. Maybe some of the listeners of my podcast have never heard these arguments or have never heard of these four firms, so if I can help introduce people to those concepts, why not? But really, this is arguing that, number one, America is headed towards an economic monopoly, or, rather, is already there. But number two, that unregulated capitalism is not the key to personal freedom. And number three, that trust-busting policies are very important. And I know that the economy is kind of the top thing on everybody's minds right now. A lot of people are, living with their parents. Home prices have gone up through the roof. Mortgage rates, student loan rates, everything is just crazy right now. Inflation, which was originally attributed to supply chain issues during the pandemic, has now just become a source of greater profit sharing for corporations who are decreasing the wages for their employees. Everybody, except, the 1% or whatever, everybody is feeling the pinch economically, and I get that. So everybody is kind of thinking of the economy in mind. And as you're thinking of the economy, I want you to be thinking of how, the key to a flourishing economy is competition and choice. And that is achieved through, in my opinion, capitalism with restraints. And that means government agencies who are willing to take a stand against big corporations and say, hey, look, you can operate as a business, you can operate in the market up to a point. You cannot abuse your employees. You cannot steal their wages. You cannot make things unlivable. You cannot buy up residential homes so that the housing supply is so limited that nobody has a place to live. You cannot, buy up all these big corporations and take over the entire economy. Yes, it's a market and there's room for you to operate as a business, but not to the point where it starts hurting the majority of the population, because we're the government and our responsibility is to provide for and protect our citizens. And in order to do that, that sometimes means going against the wishes of big corporations. So it's 2024, it's an election year. Right now, we're headed into primary season. Depending on where you live, maybe your state has already had its primary, but we're heading into primary season. There's going to be the general election in November, so this is not like a PSA. I'm not shilling for any particular political candidate, but what I am saying is vote with your wallet, vote with your money, including when you go to the polling booth. I'm sure everybody's kind of already doing that already because, like I said, the economy is kind of the first thing on everybody's mind right now. But keep that in mind when you're voting, to vote for candidates, both federally, locally, etc. Vote for candidates who are going to engage in trust-busting policies, who support workers' rights, who are going to stand up against big businesses and big corporations, and especially those who have a history of having already done so. And more importantly, I know a lot of people put, a lot of stock into the president. Ooh, who's going to be the president? Who's going to be in the White House? Is it going to be Biden? Is it going to be Trump? Like, who's going to be in the White House? Oh no, our country is going to be ruined if we get the wrong president, whatever. But I would like to remind you all that although the role of the president has increased a lot, significantly over the last couple decades, beyond what was originally designed by the Constitution, to the point where the president has a whole lot of, additional executive power that was never supposed to be there through the signing of executive orders and things like that. Originally, the way that this country's government was supposed to be designed, and the way that things should operate at least, is that Congress and legislators have the most policy-making and decision-making authority, and that the president's authority mainly extends to the realm of foreign policy, national security, international relations, all that sort of thing, right? So, do vote for president based on your views as far as foreign policy, war, national security, all that sort of thing. That should definitely be kept in your mind as far as president. But when it comes to things like the economy, jobs, businesses, all that sort of thing, that's something to keep in mind when you're considering who you vote for as your legislators. And a lot of people, like I said, put too much stock into the president. The legislators are really the ones who are making the policy changes in this country. They're the ones that are making the laws that are going to affect people like you and me. So, when you go to vote in the booths, do keep the president in mind, but even if you're not, super fond of any of the presidential candidates, it's still important to go and vote, and I would argue it's actually more important to go and vote for your legislators, both, at the state level and the local level, but also at the federal level, because they're the ones that are really going to be making those top-down decisions that affect, the average American. So anyway, this is kind of my opinion on the economy, because I know this is a hot topic right now, and that's the point of Spicy Bits, is kind of talk about those hot topics, give my controversial take on them, whatever. But it's also, I guess, my little get out the vote campaign, not like I said, I'm not shilling for any particular party or candidate. You vote for whoever you believe best aligns with your conscience and your morals, but keep in mind, right, those things. Keep in mind the way that our economy is trending. Keep in mind what has and has not been effective with our economy. And most importantly, keep in mind that the legislators are kind of the unsung heroes, if you will, or unsung demons, depending on your point of view. But the unsung, behind-the-scenes masterminds, really, when it comes to policy and politics. So that should be kind of at the forefront of your mind when you're going to vote. If you are interested in resources as far as voting, usually you can check your State Board of Elections website to check your voter registration status. You can also, usually, depends on the state, but in my state it's by county. You can go to your county Board of Elections to view a sample ballot of, based on your address, precinct, all that sort of thing, who your candidates are that are going to be on the ballot. If there's any, propositions, ballot measures, whatever, you can view those there as well. Your State Board of Elections website, where you check your voter registration, will tell you your polling place. That is only if you go to vote on the election day itself. If you want to early vote, or vote by mail, that would be something to go to your county Board of Elections for. They'll usually have information about that, early voting locations in your county, all that sort of thing, what dates early voting is, how, late the polls are open, all that. And you can also use vote411.org. I maybe it's .com. I don't know. Just look up Vote 411. It's a great website, great resource to, research candidates who are going to be on your ballot. So, like, obviously, like, your county board of elections will just tell you the names of who's on your ballot, which Vote 411 should be able to do as well. But Vote 411 has their own questionnaire, which not every candidate fills out, but, a lot of them do. So you can kind of look at that and compare where they stand on the issues and figure out, who would you like more to be holding political office, and to be representing you as a constituent. And then, even if they haven't filled out the questionnaire, you can usually, if you really feel like doing a lot of extra research, you can, like, take their name, Google, like, your state, county, city, whatever, and, on the issues, and at the very least, if nothing else, there's usually going to be some sort of, like, local news article that'll be like, here's so-and-so campaigning for, state auditor or whatever, and then you can, read what their positions are, whatnot. Sometimes they have a campaign website where they'll say, like, these are the issues that we value and prioritize, and, all that sort of stuff. So, the one thing I would encourage you not to do is to get your campaign advice from biased news sources and social media accounts like Change, all those, like, modern farmhouse vibe Instagram stories that everybody shares around election season, right? Those are chock full of biased information. Please do not get your news candidate source from, Breitbart or BuzzFeed or Vice or Vox or, the Daily Wire or whatever, right? Please go to, like, actual legitimate sources. Vote 411, like I said, it's a great nonpartisan organization. Also, more neutral news sources like Bloomberg or Insider or whatever are kind of good platforms to get your news from and, learn more about political candidates or whatever. So, anyway, with that in mind, I'm going to kind of wrap up this episode. I know it's kind of getting kind of long, but, I hope you all, not to be too cringe, but I hope you all Pokemon Go to the polls. And yeah, feel free to let me know what your thoughts are as far as my theory on, the American economy with all of my economic expertise that I obviously have. So, feel free to let me know your thoughts and comment down below. Feel free to share this podcast with your friends and stay tuned for the next episode, whenever the hell that is.